consumption hypothesis or consumption theories. How do households decide to consume or save for future? This is the fundamental microeconomic question, as it addresses the behavior of individual decision-making units. However, it also has macroeconomic consequences, as it is these decisions that affect the way economy behaves in the long run as well as in the short run. This is one of the major reasons why Adam Smith had said that consumption is the sole end and purpose of all production. It is important from the point of view of short-run analysis because of its role in determining aggregate demand. As is the case of a long run, it helps in determining the economic growth that is reached or attained by any country. For this reason, consumption expenditure is one of the key sectors of any country's economy. Even though this expenditure can be determined by a number of factors such as wealth, taste and preferences, availability of credit, and others, among all these factors, income is arguably considered as a main determinant of consumption. Today we shall focus our attention and understanding about the different consumption theories. This topic or area forms amongst the most important part of the NET exam. So let us begin our session in understanding the different consumption theories. In general, there are 4 consumption theories that we will come across. The first one is the absolute income hypothesis that is given by Keynes in the year 1936. The second one is the relative income hypothesis given by Dusenberry in the year 1949. The third one, the life cycle hypothesis, given by Ando and Modigliani, 1954 and 1963. And the last one is the permanent income hypothesis, given by Friedman in 1957. It is important to note here that when it comes to the life cycle hypothesis, the theory is given with respect to 2 subsequent years, one in 1954 and one in 1963. It is important to understand which particular theory we are referring to in order to answer questions when it comes to the precedence order as to which theory came first. The reason why life cycle hypothesis, which was given by Ando and Modigliani, are given 2 subsequent dates is because Modigliani had initially formulated the life cycle hypothesis with Richard Birnberg during his conference in University of Minnesota in 1954. However, Richard could not continue with the theory as he had passed away with respect to brain tumor shortly after the famous paper had come together, as a result of which Modigliani had to prepare this hypothesis and test it again in 1963 with Nat Ando. That is one reason why the life cycle hypothesis theory has, even though it came up early in the year 1954, it was only implemented or it was only tested in 1963 because of the sudden demise of Richard Birnberg. This is one of the important points to be noted. It will help you in answering questions when it comes to understanding or arranging theories in order of the origin. So let us start with the first theory. The first theory, that is the absolute income hypothesis, was first introduced by John Maynard Keynes in the year 1936. Now, a study of consumption actually starts with J.M. Keynes in his through his famous book, The General Theory of Employment. In this, Keynes had actually made a conjecture that the consumption function is central to the theory of economic fluctuation. So if you want to understand economic fluctuation, Keynes had insisted on the fact or emphasized on the fact that it is important to understand what is the consumption function of an individual and that way of the economy. Thus, based on Keynes' theory of consumption, Keynes had come up with conjectures that were based on introspection or casual observation. This is one of the reasons why absolute income hypothesis is also known as the fundamental psychological law of consumption. So Keynes had identified a relationship between income and consumption as key macroeconomic relationship. He had asserted that the real consumption is a function of real disposable income, that is the total income minus the taxes. As income rises, the theory asserts consumption will also rise, but not necessarily at the same rate as the increase in the income. That is to say that when we talk about the absolute income hypothesis, Keynes was talking with respect to a disposable income, that is the income after the taxes, and he also emphasized the fact that even when the income rises, the consumption will also rise, but this rise, Keynes had observed the fact that even when the income is zero, consumption still exists. Then this consumption he had termed in as autonomous consumption, which is there even when the individual is not earning any money. Now this can be explained with respect to the borrowings that are made before an individual gets a steady income. So on these basis, the absolute income hypothesis is actually described using 4 major propositions expressed specifically in terms of the marginal propensity to consume and the average propensity to consume. The first proposition that Keynes had emphasized on based on his casual observation is on the fact that the MPC, which is the change in real consumption, that is denoted by C, for a unit change in the real disposable income Y, which is the income after the taxes, will always lie between 0 and 1. The second important observation that he made is with respect to APC, stating the fact that the ratio of consumption to real disposable income will fall as income rises. This technically, what he meant was that savings is eventually a luxury. And one of the important propositions that he had emphasized was with respect to the interest rate. Now we know that the classical theories or theories before the consumption theories before Keynes were focused solely on the basis of the existing interest rate phenomena. So whatever is the interest rate in the economy will determine as to what is going to be the savings in the economy and what is going to be the consumption in the economy. Now Keynes had a completely different view with respect to it. Keynes said that the only determinant in understanding consumption was not interest rate but income. So income, according to Keynes, had a very important role in understanding consumption. Now this was a stark contradiction towards a belief of the classical economist on the basis of Keynes' consumption function. Now therefore, Keynes had rewritten his consumption function as C is equal to A plus BY, and this famously came to be known as the absolute income hypothesis of the consumption function given by Keynes. Now here, the C, which refers to consumption, was actually equated to A, which denotes autonomous consumption, that is to say the consumption that exists even when the income is zero, plus BY, that is to say where Y is your disposable income and B actually denotes the marginal propensity to consume of an individual based on the income that he earns. So in general, Keynes had formulated this formula C is equal to A plus BY, wherein your autonomous consumption is always greater than 0, that is A is always greater than 0, and your B will always lie between 0 and 1 because your MPC always lies between 0 and 1. Now these proposition that he had insisted with respect to the marginal propensity to consume and the average propensity to consume also insisted on the fact that the real consumption is a stable function of the real disposable income. Thus, this indicated that the MPC is a positive fraction, that the MPC will always be less than APC, and that APC declines as income increases, and also the fact that the marginal propensity to consume is expected to be a constant but positive and less than unity. That is to say, your MPC will lie between 0 and 1. So, on the basis of this, these were the following properties that we can eventually conclude with respect to the absolute income hypothesis. The first property is that as income rises, the average propensity to consume will fall. That is to say, your APC, which is equal to consumption divided by income, will fall. Now, the second one is that the marginal propensity to consume will lie between 0 and 1. Now, this generally indicates the fact that higher the income leads to higher consumption. The third one is that as consumption expenditure increases with an increase in income, the increase will not be proportional to the increase in the income. So if my income is increasing by 100 rupees, that will not mean that my consumption will also increase by 100 rupees. Now this non-proportional consumption function implies that in a short-run average and marginal propensities do not coincide. That is to say, your APC will never be equal to your MPC, and that APC will always be greater than your MPC. So Keynes' consumption function was denoted by the following equation: C is equal to A plus BYD, where C is consumption expenditure, A is autonomous consumption. Once again, this autonomous consumption is independent of the level of income because it is determined during the time where your income for the individual does not exist. B indicates the marginal propensity to consume, MPC, which represents a fraction of each additional rupee of income devoted to the consumption expenditure. And YD equal to the current disposable income, which is the total income that you earn after taxes. Now his consumption function can be rewritten for A greater than 0, as we know that consumption, your autonomous consumption is always going to be greater than 0, and your marginal propensity to consume will always lie between 0 and 1. The last proposition, or the last proposition that Keynes had insisted on, is with respect to the consumption function being stable both in long run as well as in short run. Now this is from the point of view of Keynes. He insisted on the fact that when you talk about the consumption function, absolute income hypothesis, wherein C is equal to A plus BY, this is a stable function in the case of short run as well as long run. Now, obviously, shortly after this, hypothesis was tested in separate cases, and with respect to this with respect to the studies to prove Keynes' conjectures, we had come up with two different theories of contradictions. The first one is the drift theory of consumption. Now, this drift theory of consumption was famously given by Arthur Smithies and James Tobin. They had tested Keynes' absolute income hypothesis on the basis of different studies or different case studies, and they had come to the conclusion that A, the short-run relationship between consumption and income is non-proportional. That is to say that as income increases, consumption will also increase, but the increase in the consumption will not be proportional to the increase in income. However, when they considered the time series data for a long-run relationship between consumption and income, it turned out to be proportional. That is to say, eventually my MPC became equal to APC. Now, this latter consumption income behavior led to an upward shift or a drift in the short-run non-proportional consumption function. Now, these shift or this drift that was caused in the consumption function was not because of the income factor. It was a result of factors other than income. So that is one of the reasons why when Tobin and Smithies had come up with the drift theory, they emphasized that it did not conclude up with the conclusions of the Keynesian absolute income hypothesis. However, the first change or the first difference between them was with respect to the behavior of consumption and income relationship in short run compared to in long run. So in short run, yes, your APC was greater than MPC, but in a long run, your APC was turning out to be equal to MPC. That is, it turned out to be proportional. However, the reason why these changes were being found out was not because of the changes in income, but because of other factors. And these factors that was given by Smith and Tobin later can be categorized under the following heading. So the first reason that there is a drift in consumption or an upward trend in consumption according to Smithies and Tobin is because of the factor that people hold assets. So Tobin had introduced asset holdings in the budget studies or comparing families of both black and whites in America to test this hypothesis. The conclusion that he came up with is that as your asset increases, your asset holding increases of the family, they tend to increase their propensity to consume. This leads. So the new products is another reason why there is an increase in or a shift in the consumption trend. With the introduction of new consumer products, consumer durable products after the Second World War, it led to a shift in the consumption function in an upward direction that led to the drift. The third reason, according to Tobin and Smithies, as to the reason why consumption actually has a drift was because of the trends in urbanization, wherein your population was moving from a rural area to urban areas. This ended up shifting the consumption pattern in a different way as compared to the initial consumption trend that was followed by Keynes. Another reason why there is a change in consumption pattern is because of the way in which the age has been distributed in the society. As we see that there has been a continuous increase in the percentage of old people in the total population over long run. Though the old people do not earn, but they do consume commodities, and this consequently led to an increase in their numbers, led to a shift in the consumption function. Another reason, according to Smithies and Tobin, that led to a shift or a drift in the consumption pattern is the availability of consumer credit in the economy. The easier it is to avail credit in the economy, the more easier it will be to buy commodities and consume commodities at a faster rate. So the increasing availability and convenience of short-term consumer credit led to a shift in consumption function upward. The greater ease of buying consumer goods with credit cards, debit cards, use of ATMs, checks, and the availability of installment buying causes an upward shift in the consumption function. Now, the great merit of this theory is that it lays stress on the factors other than income which affect the consumer behavior. In this sense, it represents a major advance in the theory of consumption function. The second test of Keynesian hypothesis or Keynesian theory of consumption was done by Kuznets and is often known as Kuznets paradox. It was in relevant terms as per the drift theory that was led by Tobin and Smithies. Again, in the Kuznets paradox, it was stated that when you take in the data with respect to US economy, majority of time the APC was constant or coming out to be constant in a long run. So this was one of the contradictions towards the absolute income hypothesis that was developed by Keynes. So the first thing that was stated was that MPC is less than APC and that APC declines as income increases according to the Keynesian absolute income hypothesis. Now, Kuznets concluded that there is no tendency for the average propensity to consume to decline as the disposable income rises in a long run. So APC will always be equal to MPC in the long run. So his empirical study actually is often referred to as the Kuznets puzzle or the consumption puzzle, which is a contradiction between Kuznets' empirical findings and Keynesian consumption function, thus called the consumption function puzzle. Kuznets showed that except for depression years, the average propensity to consume in US over the period of 1869 to 1938 fluctuated narrowly between 0.84 and 0.89. So technically we are just insisting on the fact that the APC in a long run for a longer period of time tended out to be more or less constant than the existing view wherein APC was greater than MPC. In other words, APC was approximately mean reverted such that even if income increases a lot, consumption kept almost a stable fraction of income. So consumption was a proportion rather than the function of income. Now, because of this, the Keynesian consumption function, which is referred to as C equal to A plus BY, was rewritten by Kuznets as in comparison to the original classical economic view where consumption is nothing but a function of disposable income. Here, Kuznets does not consider or take into consideration the autonomous consumption that exists when the income is zero. So, whereas in Keynes' consumption function, APC falls as income rises, with respect to Kuznets, the consumption function remains constant over a longer period of time. Further, the value of marginal propensity to consume, which is less than 1 in Keynes, is much higher in Kuznets' function as compared to that of Keynes. Also, Keynes' consumption function, which is equal to C is equal to the autonomous consumption plus the marginal propensity to consume with respect to the disposable income, is a short-run consumption function, and thus it's linear and non-proportional. That is to say that your APC will always be greater than MPC. However, when it came to Kuznets' function, the consumption function was rewritten by the equation C is equal to BY. This is more or less concerned with respect to a long run, as in a long run we do not consider the case of autonomous consumption and is referred to as long run consumption function. Here the consumption function tended to be linear and proportional. That is to say that the APC is equal to your MPC, or APC is constant. Now what was Kuznets' point? Kuznets' point was that A, there is no autonomous consumption. That is, the concept of A is not there, or C is not there at all. C bar is not there. B is a proportional long run consumption function in which APC and MPC are not different. In other words, in long run consumption function, C is equal to BY. So as A is equal to 0, the long run consumption function is 1, in which APC does not change over time and MPC and APC at all levels of income, as contrasted to the short run proportional MPC less than So, what was Kuznets' point? Kuznets insisted on the fact that the autonomous consumption is irrelevant with respect to the consumption theory in a long run. So, as a result of which, there is no concept of A or C bar. The second point that he insisted was the fact that the proportional long run consumption function, in which APC and MPC are not different, that is to say, APC is equal to MPC in a long run. So, as A is equal to 0, the long run consumption function is 1, in which APC does not change over time, and MPC is equal to APC at all levels of income, as contrasted by the short-run non-proportional theory by Keynes that stated that MPC will always be less than APC in the consumption income relationship. So here we can see the two diagrams through which consumption has been, or the consumption theory has been explained by both Keynes as well as Kuznets. Now, Keynes' theory, the consumption starts with respect to the point C, wherein the point OC is denoted by denotes the autonomous consumption, that is the consumption that exists even at the level of income that is equal to 0. Now, this consumption function is thus referred to by the function of A, autonomous consumption, and also on the basis of the disposable income, whereas Kuznets' consumption function starts directly from the origin, stating the fact that in a long run, consumption is only a function of the disposable income. Now, let us have a look at certain questions that came up over the years in the UGC NET exam, followed by the CBSE NET exam. Now, this is a question that has been taken from the year 2013, June, paper 2. The question states as follows: in Keynes' equation of absolute income hypothesis, C is equal to alpha naught plus BY. Again, remember the fact that C is consumption expenditure, alpha naught consumption expenditure when income Y is equal to 0, B is marginal propensity to consume, and then the question that has been asked is, then which of the following statement is false? First, MPC is independent of the level of income. The second one, MPC is dependent on the level of income. C, APC falls as income rises, and D, APC is greater than MPC. Now, as per the propositions that has been stated by Keynes, we already know that options C and D stands true. APC is greater than MPC, and also APC falls as income rises according to the Keynesian absolute income hypothesis. Now, with respect to A and B, MPC is dependent on the level of income, or is it independent of the level of income? So the answer to this is A, that MPC is independent of the level of income. Now again, note the point, the question that has been asked here is with respect to which of the following statements is false. The second question that has been asked was in the year 2015, paper 2, December. Consider the following statements. The first statement: according to Keynes, as income rises, lower proportion of income is spent on consumption. Number 2, according to Kuznets, as income rises, the average propensity to save remains fairly stable and constant. Of the following, which statements are correct? A, both A, 1 and 2 are true. B, neither 1 and 2 are correct. 3, only 1 is true, and D, only 2 is true. Now again, when we consider the Keynesian absolute income hypothesis, as the income rises, low proportion of income is being spent on consumption, which is stating as true, because we state in the second proposition that with respect to this statement, Keynes had actually proven the fact that savings is a luxury. So after a point of time, as income increases, people tend to consume the part of income, but not with respect to the same rate as the increase in income. So the consumption is relatively lower, that is, as the remaining amount is saved by the individual. So statement 1 is absolutely true. The second statement is with respect to the Kuznets consumption function, which was a contradiction towards the Keynes function, thus stating the fact that as income rises, the APC to save remains fairly stable and constant, which is true. In a long run, your APC is constant. So as a result of which, the answer to this question will be 1. That is, both 1 and 2 are true. This is another explanation towards answering the question. A, Keynes, as income increases, he had insisted on the fact that the average propensity to consume will fall, or APC will fall. However, Kuznets had concluded that there is no tendency for average propensity to consume to decline as the disposable income rises. That is, APC is always equal to MPC. Thus, Kuznets consumption function remains constant over a long period of time. In this case, APC plus APS, that is the average propensity to consume plus average propensity to save, is equal to 1 because income is neither used for consumption or for saving. If APC is constant, APS will also be constant. So this is just additional information with respect to Kuznets consumption puzzle. The next question, 2015 December paper 2, question number 2. If the marginal propensity to consume is equal to the average propensity to consume for all levels of income, the correct corresponding consumption function will be A, C is equal to A plus BY, B, C is equal to A plus B divided by Y, C, C equal to BY, and D, C equal to BY squared. Now, let's take into consideration the question in detail here. Now, it is given to us that APC is equal to MPC at all levels of income. Thus, we are not considering the case of autonomous consumption. So, in this case, wherein the Keynesian consumption function is equal to C is equal to A plus BY, our A is 0. And in this case, because MPC is equal to APC, we will come up with the conclusion that the eventual consumption function will be C is equal to BY. Therefore, the correct answer to this question is 3, that is C is equal to BY. 2017 November paper 2, another question was asked with respect to the same concept. Now, it's the same question that has been asked over a period of time. If marginal propensity to consume is equal to the average propensity to consume for all levels of income, then the corresponding consumption function, we've just proved it, it will be equal to option number 2, C is equal to BY, because again we are considering the case wherein APC is equal to MPC. According to the Keynesian absolute income hypothesis, my MPC will always be less than APC, thus indicating on the fact that there will exist a concept of autonomous consumption that will be existing even when the income is 0. So again the answer is going to be C is equal to BY, as there is no concept of autonomous consumption. Also, APC is equal to MPC denotes the point in which APC is constant over a long run. So again the explanation towards this has been elaborately explained, wherein denoting the fact that Keynes consumption function was denoted by C is equal to A plus BY, Kuznets consumption function C is equal to BY. Both of them are comparatively different. A, there is no autonomous consumption concept here in the Kuznets equation, and the proportional long run consumption function in APC and MPC are not different. That is to say, they are both equal. In other words, in long run consumption function consumption equation is going to be C is equal to BY. Another question that has been asked in the UGC net or CBSE net was in the year 2017, January paper 2. Consider the following statements regarding the CBSE net exam. The question was given as follows. Consider the following statement regarding the consumption function fitted by Simon Kuznets to the US economic data for the period 1869 to 1929. Statement number 1. There appeared no constant terms in linear consumption function so fitted. And number 2. The APC and MPC are not significantly different. Which of the following statements is or are true? Answer from the codes below. Code number 1, both the statements are not true. Code number 2, only 1 is true. Code number 3, only 2 is true. And code number 4, both statements 1 and 2 are true. Now again, note the point here. We have to refer with respect to the Kuznets paradox and not the absolute income hypothesis. Now, according to the Kuznets paradox or the Kuznets consumption theory, the first point that was insisted was that there exists a relationship between APC and MPC which is not different. That is to say, APC is equal to MPC, or in other words, APC turned out to be constant in the long run. Now, this statement is clearly fitted in the second statement that has been given to us, stating the fact that APC and MPC are not significantly different. This means that APC is equal to MPC, which is correctly which has been correctly stated out in the Simon Kuznets theory. The second part of it, of the Simon Kuznets theory, stated on the fact that the given consumption function is linear and proportional. The second important point that was stated by Simon Kuznets in the consumption paradox was the fact that the consumption function is linear and proportional. So the proportionality is given by number 2 statement, and the linearity is being given by statement number 1. So both these statements hold true with respect to the consumption puzzle or the consumption paradox that was given by Simon Kuznets. Hence, the correct answer to this question will be option number 4. With respect to Keynes' conjectures or Keynes' casual observation on consumption patterns that exist in the society, new theories with respect to consumption actually came up, and one of these theories that hold a lot of prominence in the consumption theories is actually the relative income hypothesis that is given by Dusenberry. Now, even though Dusenberry is associated with relative income hypothesis on a larger basis, however, Dorothy Brady and Rose Friedman are other two economists who have contributed towards the understanding of the relative income hypothesis. So James Dusenberry's concept of consumption was actually based on the rejection of two fundamental assumptions that was given by Keynes in his absolute income hypothesis. The first one, the first rejection of the Keynesian theory was that every individual's consumption behavior is not independent but interdependent of the behavior of every other individual. Now, Keynes has considered only income as one of the major factors that led to a change in consumption patterns. Here, Dusenberry had insisted on the fact that it is not only the consumption behavior of individuals, but how individuals are related to each other and how the individual of one behavior actually affects or actually makes the other individual decide on his or her consumption patterns that actually can explain the consumption trends in general. So that was one part that Dusenberry had rejected with respect to the Keynes casual observation. The second part was consumption's relation was or is irreversible with respect to time. Now again, he had insisted, he had given importance to time in this particular concept, and thus brought in these two important fundamental assumptions which were not clearly explained by Keynes. So let us look into it in general. So in general, Dusenberry not only emphasized on the social character of consumption patterns that existed in the society. This may give us a clear picture as to how keeping in trend makes us decide on the consumption patterns which one may not consider with respect to one's personal taste and preferences, that is to say. So in formulating this theory of consumption function, Dusenberry writes, a real understanding of the problem of consumer behavior must begin with the full recognition of the social character of consumption patterns. Now, by the social character of consumption pattern, he indicates or he means that the tendency in human beings is not only to keep up with someone, but also to surpass someone. Now, this someone often refers to rich neighbors. So that is one of the reasons why majority of the consumption trends that we have or we make as individual is often based on the consumption trends that exist in the society in general. We make sure that whatever we have is in trend or in par with whatever our neighbors have. So, relative income hypothesis states that the satisfaction or the utility an individual derives from a given consumption level depends on not the absolute but the relative magnitude in the society. So, average consumption, the relative average consumption that exists in the society rather than the absolute level. Now, this is based on a postulate that has long been acknowledged by psychologists and sociologists, namely that individuals care about status. So, consumption henceforth, according to Dusenberry, can be categorized as being determined by two important factors or dependent on two important factors. The first one is the previous peak level of income and the past consumption standard. The second one is the standard consumption of others, which is relative income. So, we should come across these two terms in details in the coming session. So, in general, what Dusenberry insisted was that A, people do not take into consideration their consumption pattern based on the absolute level of income, but based on the relative level of income. So, whatever is the consumption of others will be taken into consideration when I have to make my own consumption pattern. The second part that consumption was dependent on, according to Dusenberry, is the existing level of income that or the existing level of consumption with respect to the level of peak income that has been given. So, if suppose, let me just assume that tomorrow my income by some means because of recession or because of some reason comes down, my consumption will not come down with respect to the fall in income because I will still be continuing to live with the same consumption pattern. So because of this reason, the previous peak level of income and past consumption standard hold also relevance in understanding the consumption patterns that exist in the society. So in economics, relative income hypothesis is attributed to James Dusanberry, who investigated the implication of this idea for consumption behavior in his book that was given in 1949 on income savings and theory of consumer behavior. It's important to note, just in case the question can be asked, as to the books that has been written by Dusanberry that ended up showing the relative income hypothesis. So based on this, Dusanberry had actually come up with two explaining these. So based on these relative income hypothesis, Dusanberry had emphasized on two important effects on the basis of which he had tried to explain the consumption theory. The first one he classified into demonstration effect, and the second one he classified into ratchet effect. Now again, what do we mean by demonstration effect? Demonstration effect is nothing but he tried to categorize the impact of how people behave or how people try to spend money relatively in relative terms rather than in absolute terms. So that is to say that by emphasizing relative income as a determinant of consumption, the relative income hypothesis suggests that individuals or households try to imitate or copy the consumption levels of their neighbors or other families in particular community. Now this is called demonstration effect, or in other words, it's also been renamed as Dusanberry effect. So the one part wherein he says talks about consumption, he insists on the fact that oftentimes people tend to or try to copy the consumption trends that exist in the society, and in this way they try to spend their income not with respect to, or they have consumption not with respect to the changes in income, but with respect to the relative changes in income that is there with respect to the society. So if I have a bike in my house, my neighbor will also try to buy something relevant. So we'll try to increase our consumption pattern based on what is available or what we try to imitate from the society. Now this is because if incomes of all families increase in the same proportion, distribution of relative income would also remain unchanged, and therefore the proportion of consumption expenditure to the income which depends on relative income will remain constant. So here the average propensity to consume does not fall as the income increases. So here the average propensity to consume does not fall as the income increases. The second part of it is that a family with a given income would devote more of its income on consumption if it's living in a community in which that income is regarded as relatively low because of working of demonstration effect. On the other hand, a family will spend lower proportion of its income if it's living in a community in which the income is considered as relatively high, because the demonstration effect will not affect the present case in this scenario. So that is to say, if I live in a neighborhood wherein my consumption patterns, when I try to imitate with the others, my consumption actually increases with respect to the relative income concept, my savings will be very much less. Whereas if my consumption pattern with respect to the society I live in is comparatively low because of the living in the community, the income is considered to be relative high, then the demonstration effect will not be present in this particular case. The second effect that Dusanberry categorizes or classifies is the ratchet effect. Now, this ratchet effect is also known as the effect that has been caused by the past peak level of income. That is to say that even if my income increases or decreases, my consumption pattern does not automatically change to the next level or does not fall at the level. It will be constant with respect to what my income was. What was my peak income? So for instance, if suppose my consumption is around 10,000 rupees with respect to my income of say 50,000 rupees. So I'm consuming 10,000 on a monthly basis. Now all of a sudden, if suppose because of some reason my income comes down to 40,000, it would not show a sudden fall in my consumption pattern. I would still be consuming 10,000 because 10,000 has been is the consumption pattern for me on the basis of the past peak income that was available. So this is another significant part of Dusenberry's relative income hypothesis that suggests that when income of individual or households falls, their consumption expenditure does not fall much. Now, this is why it is called the ratchet effect. This is because Dusenberry tried to explain that people try to maintain their consumption at the highest level of income that has been attained earlier. Now, this is partly due to the demonstration effect, as I explained before, as people do not want to show to their neighbors that they no longer can afford or maintain the higher standards of living. Now, the difference between relative income and the absolute income centers on the issues of context. Now, what is this issue? Relative income measures your income in relation to the other members of the society, weighing it against the standards of the day. Now, absolute income, on the other hand, does not take into consideration those factors, but simply reflects the total amount of earnings you have received in the given period of time. Now, so this is the concept of relative income hypothesis. Let us come across certain questions that has been asked in UGC NET, CBSE NET over the period of time. So first questions that we saw, 2012 December 3. According to which of the following hypothesis consumption is irreversible? A. Absolute income hypothesis. B. Relative income hypothesis. C. Permanent income hypothesis. And D. Life cycle hypothesis. Now, the two important fundamental rejections of the Keynesian theory that was explained by Dusenberry was, one, that every individual is consumption is not independent but interdependent on how other people in the society behave, and the second rejection was with respect to the consumption as a relation is irreversible with respect to time. So this concept was explained by none other than Dusenberry, and Dusenberry's theory is clearly the relative income hypothesis. So the answer to this question is B, relative income hypothesis. 2014 December, paper 2, question number 11. The relative income hypothesis of Dusenberry. 2014 December, paper 2, question number 11. The relative income hypothesis of Dusenberry suggests that income increases, consumption function curve shifts above, and therefore A. Average propensity to consume rise, average propensity to consume falls. C. Average propensity to consume remains constant, and D. Average propensity to consume is equal to 1. Now, this again was explained very clearly by Dusenberry that overall the average propensity to consume does not fall, as is the case of the Keynesian income hypothesis, wherein your average propensity to consume will fall. So the correct answer to this question is the fact that option number C, that is to say the average propensity to consume does not fall, in fact it stays constant. Once again, 2014 June, paper 3, question number 10. Bandwagon effect is found in A. Relative income hypothesis, B. Permanent income hypothesis, C. Life cycle hypothesis, or D. Absolute income hypothesis. Now, what is this bandwagon effect? Bandwagon effect is nothing but people trying to follow a trend. So if one person goes and buys a product A, everybody in the society gets fascinated and ends up buying product A for that instance. So that is one reason, or that is another term that has been used to explain the demonstration effect. So bandwagon effect is nothing but demonstration effect, and again it was clearly given by Dusenberry and explained in its relative income hypothesis. Thus the correct answer to this question is A. Now here's another question that has been asked in NET exam. 2014 December, paper 3, question number 11. Which of the propositions of the past income hypothesis of Dusenberry is correct? Choose from the quotes below. Statement 1. The correct consumption is the function of not only current income but also of the past income. There is an asymmetrical relationship between income and consumption during contraction and expansion. Consumption income relationship is irreversible. Or 4. Consumption falls less than income during depression, but the rise in consumption is much more during expansion. So, question is, which of the proposition of the past income hypothesis of Dusenberry is correct? So we know, 1, the current consumption is a function of not only the current income but also the past income. Now that is absolutely true. Also, the third point, that is the consumption income relationship is irreversible, is also true. So these are the 2 points which completely are justified in the Dusenberry's relative income hypothesis. Is the correct answer to this is 1 and 3. So let us have a look at this question that has been asked in NET exam 2014 December paper 3. Which of the following propositions of the past income hypothesis of Dusenberry are correct? Number 1, the correct consumption is a function of not only current income but also the past income. Number 2, there is an asymmetrical relationship between income and consumption during contraction and expansion. Number 3, consumption income relationship is irreversible. Number 4, consumption falls less than income during depression, but rise in consumption is much more during expansion. Now clearly statements 1 and 3 are the fundamental laws that had been explained by Dusenberry as a contradiction towards a Keynesian theory. So 1 and 3 hold true completely. Now let us have a look at second statement. There's an asymmetrical relationship between income and consumption during contraction and expansion. True. Because of the demonstration, because of the ratchet effect, the relationship between income and consumption is not as symmetrical as we can see earlier in this theory. So again, with respect to contraction expansion, the relationship is asymmetrical. The next one is consumption falls less than income during depression, but rise in consumption is more during expansion. So that is to say, again, keeping in trend with the ratchet effect, if the income falls, my consumption will not fall. However, when the income increases, my consumption may increase with respect to, but not the same rate at the rate at which income is increasing, but my consumption will increase because my peak income has now increased. So the correct answer to this question is going to be D. All of the above statements are true. Question number 6, UGC NET 2015, June paper 3. In relative income hypothesis, consumption is related to A, past peak in consumptions, B, median current consumption of the peer group, C, neither 1 or 2, or D, 1 and 2. Now we know that consumption is dependent on both the behavior of the others as explained by the demonstration effect and also based on the past peak consumption that has been explained by the ratchet effect. So the correct answer to this question is again going to be 4, that is both A and B. Question number 10. This was asked in 2017 November paper 3. Bandwagon effect is found in which of the following? A, life cycle hypothesis, permanent income hypothesis, absolute income hypothesis, or D, relative income hypothesis. Once again, bandwagon effect is nothing but demonstration effect, and that was clearly shown in relative income hypothesis. So this is again a repetitive question that had been asked previously in June 2014 paper number 3 and 2017 November paper 3. Now with this we come to the next theory, that is the permanent income hypothesis. Now permanent income hypothesis was given by or proposed by Milton Friedman in 1957. This is a theory of consumer spending which states that people will spend money at a level consistent with the expected long-term average income. Now the level of expected long-term average income then becomes thought of as the level of permanent income, and that can be safely spent. So this hypothesis implies that changes in consumption behavior are not predictable because they are based on individuals' expectations. So permanent income hypothesis was given by Milton Friedman in the year 1957, for which he had also won the Nobel Prize in the year 1976 for his work on money theory and the analysis of consumption behavior. He was a leader of Chicago Montrose School of Economics. Now, the one thing that the theory states is that the person's consumption in a year is determined not by just their income in that current year or the current income, but also based on the expected income in the future years, which is referred to as the permanent income in this case. Now, consumption according to Friedman, according to So consumption, according to Friedman, depends neither on absolute income nor on relative income, but on permanent income. Now, this permanent income is based on expected future income. Thus, he tried to find out the relationship between consumption and that future income that is expected by every individual, which is termed as the permanent income. Now, the assumptions, now these play a very important role in answering question in the permanent income hypothesis or consumption theory with respect to Friedman. The first assumption is that there is no correlation between transitory income and permanent income. Now, transitory income is not the expected income, but the income which is in transition all the time. So cash in hand can be taken in as transitory income. The second assumption is there is no correlation between permanent and transitory consumption. Third, there is no correlation between transitory consumption and transitory income. Fourth, the only difference in permanent income affect consumption systematically. When we talk about the assumptions, now let us study the assumptions of permanent income hypothesis. The first assumption is that there is no correlation between transitory income and permanent income. Second, there is no correlation between permanent and transitory consumption. Third, there is no correlation between transitory consumption and transitory income. Fourth, only difference in the permanent income affect consumption systematically. Fifth, it is assumed that individual estimates of permanent income are based on backward looking of expectation. And the sixth one, MPC from transitory income is 0. Now, these are certain assumptions that hold true in permanent income hypothesis. Let's just have a look at a question that has been asked with respect to this. According to the permanent income hypothesis or permanent income theory, A, increase in the current income leads to a larger increase in the current consumption. B, current consumption is not significantly affected by temporary changes in income. C, the MPC out of transitory income is greater than the MPC out of permanent income. Or D, increase in the interest rate will affect consumption negatively. Now, on the basis of the assumption that we saw here, we can see that there is no correlation between on the basis of the assumptions that were stated here, the only part that holds true is current consumption is not significantly affected by this temporary changes in income. So based on that we correct answer is going to be B. According to permanent income hypothesis, the assumption states that current consumption is not significantly affected by temporary changes in any income. We did not talk with respect to the MPC. We did not talk with respect to the interest rate. We have not come across the fact that current income leads to a larger increase in current consumption. So the correct answer towards this question is going to be B. Now this is again given by the assumption. So the assumption actually clearly shows that there is no significant difference between the current consumption or the temporary changes in the income that affects the income. So the correct answer is B. The central idea of permanent income hypothesis is very simple. Now, people base their consumption on what they consider to be normal income. In doing so, they attempt to maintain a fairly constant standard of living, even though their incomes may vary considerably from month to month or from year to year. As a result, increase and decrease in income, which people see as temporary, have little effect on their consumption spending. So whatever is going to be my income this year may not be the income that will be there for the next year or the next month or the subsequent years. So however, still people formulate a consumption pattern based on the basis of what they consider to be the normal income. So this increase and decrease in income, people consider it to see it as a part of the temporary changes in the income, and this will not affect the consumption spending. Now this was once that was stated by And this was what was stated by Friedman in his permanent income hypothesis. Now the question that has been asked, just considering the fact or probable question that can be asked, is according to permanent income theory of consumption, A, the short-run multiplier is identical to the long-run multiplier. B, the short-run multiplier is larger than the long-run multiplier. C, the short-run multiplier MPC is larger than the long-run MPC. Or D, the short-run MPC is smaller than the long-run MPC. So the correct answer to this question will be D, the short-run MPC is smaller than the long-run MPC. The reason why we say that is because MPC is considered to be the proportion of small changes in disposable income that would be spent on consumption instead of being saved. Now this computed by dividing the changes in consumption by the change in disposable income that caused it. According to the permanent income hypothesis, the increase and decrease in income which people see as temporary have little effect on their consumption spending. This is what we had explained here in the last sentences that has been marked in green. So based on the central ideas about what people consider to be normal and how this normal income is not affected by the temporary changes in the increase or decrease that we see in income, as a result of which my short-run MPC is comparatively smaller as compared to my long-run MPC, because in a long run the transitory income will become equal to the permanent income or the average income that an individual earns over his period of time. So the correct answer is D, that the short-run MPC is smaller than the long-run MPC. So the hypothesis actually states that the choices made by consumers regarding their consumption patterns are determined not only by the current income but also by their long-term income expectation. Now this long-term income expectation is what is being termed as the permanent income. So key conclusion of this theory is that transitory short-term changes in income have little effect on the consumer spending behavior. The idea behind permanent income hypothesis is that consumption depends on what people expect to earn over the considerable period of time. That is the current income plus the anticipated future income. So again, let's just compare with respect to the consumption theories that we have studied so far. When we consider the case of the absolute income hypothesis, the consumption depends exactly on income, and this income is nothing but the absolute income according to the Keynes. The second, when we studied relative income hypothesis, we came across that consumption depends not only on absolute income, but it depends upon relative income, about how people relatively view their income in the society. So if their income is comparatively low, they will tend to spend high. If their income is comparatively high in the society, they will tend to spend or consume lower. So, and this he clearly explained with respect to two effects, that is, one is demonstration effect and the other one is ratchet effect, which is the second determinant of consumption according to Dusenberry. That is to say that the consumption pattern is dependent also on the past peak income that existed for the individual. When we came to the permanent income hypothesis, here the consumption depends upon what people expect to earn. So the expectation, individuals' expectations of what is the income. So the current income, apart from the current income, their future expected income also plays an important role in determining what is the consumption pattern that exists for the individual in the society. In order to test the theory, Friedman assumed that on average people would base their idea of normal and permanent income on the basis of what had happened over the past several years. Thus, if they computed permanent income as the average of the past 4 years and the income had been $13,000, $10,000, $15,000 and $8,000 respectively, they would consider the permanent income as $11,500. That is the average of all these 4 years of income, though our expectation of future income do not solely depend on what has happened in the past. This is more clearly seen in permanent income hypothesis, which suggests that people will try to decide whether or not a change in income is temporary. If they decide that it is, it will have small effect on their spending. Only when they know that the change in income is permanent will they try to change their consumption pattern by increasing or decreasing it. As the changes is temporary, their decision to whether or not change will have a very small, significant or insignificant effect on their spending. As with all the economic theory, this theory also does not describe any particular household but only what happens on an average. So an increase in income should not immediately increase consumption spending by very much, but with time it would have a greater and greater effect. A change in spending changes income, but people only slowly adjust to it. As they do, their extra spending changes income further. An initial increase in spending tends to have an effect that takes a long time to completely reveal. Let's just have a look at the probable questions that can be asked for NET exam. Now, according to permanent income hypothesis, long run aggregate consumption APC equals to the long run MPC. Long run APC is greater than long run MPC. Long run APC is less than long run MPC, or APC of every individual is equal irrespective of the difference will be encouraged. The correct answer to this question. Now, the short run consumption function is linear and non-proportional in the case of Keynes, which stated the fact that APC is greater than MPC. Now, this is similar to that of the Keynesian theory. However, in a long run, the consumption function is linear and proportional. That is to say, APC is equal to MPC, because in a long year, people adjust to the changes in the income, and they have a permanent income. They do not consider transitory income to be affecting their consumption pattern. So again, in the case of permanent income hypothesis, my consumption function will also have a component k YP, where K is constant and wherein your MPC is equal to your APC. So the average propensity to consume, that is the ratio to consumption expenditure to the level of disposable income, will remain constant in a long run. So the early Keynesian models of consumption function related current consumption expenditure to the current levels of income or disposable income. Now, here the models took the form where C is equal to A plus BYD, where C is consumption expenditure, A is autonomous consumption, or consumption at the income level 0, B is MPC, and YD is current disposable income. Now, according to the permanent income hypothesis, Y can be divided into two. YP, which is permanent or the projected levels of income, and YT, which is transitory or unexpected changes in income. Thus, Friedman's hypothesis holds a basic relationship between consumption and income as proportional. Thus, Y is equal to YP plus YT is one of the equations of permanent income hypothesis, leading to the fact that the consumption will now be equal to a consumption with respect to the permanent income plus a consumption with respect to the transitory income. So therefore, CP and CT. So this is with respect to the permanent income hypothesis as given by Friedman. Let's have a look at some of the questions that has been asked over the years. First question, which of the following is not an assumption of the permanent income hypothesis? A, transitory income can be positive and negative. B, permanent income depends on human and non-human wealth. C, transitory consumption can be both positive and negative. Or D, average propensity to consume is greater than the marginal propensity to consume. Now clearly, the question here is to figure out which is not an assumption of the permanent income hypothesis. So in the permanent income hypothesis, we have stated on the fact that both the transitory income and the transitory consumption can be positive as well as negative with respect to the changes in income. So we had seen a situation in which over the year my income may increase, may decrease, but these transitory changes in income or consumption does not directly or indirectly affect the changes of the consumption patterns of the people in the society. So 1 and 3 are assumptions of the permanent income hypothesis. Similarly, permanent income depends upon human wealth and non-human wealth. So again, permanent income depends upon what is my monthly income and also based on the non-human wealth such as assets or bonds or debentures. So these also constitute a part of permanent income hypothesis. So point number 2 is also a correct assumption with respect to the permanent income hypothesis. However, we had stated the fact that average propensity to consume is equal to the MPC in terms of the permanent income hypothesis, especially in the long run. So that does not hold true with respect to the permanent income hypothesis. Hence, the correct answer to this question as to which of the following assumption is not true is 4. Average propensity to consume is greater than marginal propensity to consume is false. In the permanent income hypothesis of consumption, components of which one pair has proportional relationship? Permanent income and transitory income, permanent income, transitory consumption, permanent income and permanent consumption, transitory income and transitory consumption. Now, proportional income is shown in the long run. That is to say, APC is equal to MPC. Now, that relation is shown clearly by permanent income and permanent consumption. Hence, the correct answer to this question is going to be permanent income and permanent consumption. That is option number C. Let's look at some of the questions that had been asked in the previous years of UGC NET, CBSE. Which of the following codes is correct? 2012, June for the previous years in NET exam. 2012, June, paper number 2. According to Milton Friedman's theory of permanent component of consumption expenditure depends on number 1, transitory income alone, number 2, transitory and permanent income, number 3, permanent income alone, and number 4, windfall gains. Now, in general, we have studied the permanent income hypothesis is dependent on both the transitory income as well as the transitory or the permanent income. So, we had explained that C is a function of CP plus CT, where C is consumption with respect to permanent income and consumption with respect to the transitory income. However, note the point here, we are only asked a question with respect to the permanent component of consumption expenditure. So, we are not asked with respect to the permanent income hypothesis, even though one look at the question might lead us to ask a question that, we are talking about the permanent income hypothesis. So, the correct answer might be 2. That is to say, transitory income as well as permanent income. However, we are asked only with respect to the permanent component of consumption expenditure, what it depends upon. So, it depends only upon the permanent income, because transitory income has no effect on the consumption spending of an individual in the long run. So, the correct answer to this question is D, that is only 3 is correct. Another question that had been asked, 2012, June, paper 3, question number 11. When current income includes negative transitory component relating consumption with current income will produce A, an APC to consume that is lower than the long run average propensity to consume, B, an APC to consume that is higher than the APC in the long run, C, an APC that equals to the long run average propensity to consume, or D, none of the above. Now, in the transitory component, what did we say? We had insisted on the fact that changes with respect to the transitory component will not lead to a change in consumption pattern. So, the answer is going to be B, that is the average propensity to consume expresses, that is June 2012, paper 3. When 2012, paper 3, June. When current income includes negative transitory component relating consumption with current income will produce A, an average propensity to consume that is lower than long run average propensity to consume, B, an APC that is higher than the APC to consume in the long run, C, an APC that is equal to the long run APC, or D, none of the above. Now, with respect to the theory that we had stated, we know that APC to consume will be higher than the average propensity to consume in a long run, because in the long run, permanent income is the one that plays an action in the consumption pattern and not the transitory income. So here the correct answer is B. As to why we say that, the first reason is the average propensity to consume, as we all know, expresses the percentage of income consumed at any given level of income. In other words, it's the amount of income that average consumer spends on goods and services. People will try to decide whether or not a change of income is temporary if they decide that it is or it will have a small effect on their spending. So as a result of which, what happens is the short-term changes in income will have little effect on the consumer spending behavior. So when the current income includes negative components in the short run, APC will be longer than or more as compared to the APC in the long run. An increase and a decrease in income should not immediately increase or decrease the consumption spending by very much, but with time it would have a greater and greater effect. For this reason, increase and decreases in income, which people see as temporary, have little effect on their consumption spending pattern. So again, once we have a look at the question again now, we'll see that we are talking with respect to the transitory component, and we had already studied in the permanent income hypothesis that over a period of time, transitory income would not make any significant changes or affect the changes in the consumer spending behavior. So as a result of which, we can just we can state the fact that APC in short run is actually greater than the APC in the long run. Number 3. Question number 11. The permanent income hypothesis is consistent with cross-section and time series data because A. Higher income households are savers since their current income includes positive transitory components. B. Higher income households are savers since their current income includes negative transitory components. C. Lower income households are savers since their current income includes negative transitory components. Or D. Lower income households are savers since their current income includes positive transitory components. Now the correct answer to this question will be A. That is, higher income households are savers since their current income includes positive transitory components. Now why do we say that? Let's just have a look at the explanation towards this question. Consumption function over a different income group, that is what we term as cross-sectional data, and the consumption function over a period of time is what is termed as time series data. Now for a cross-sectional data, we would expect that the lower income groups would consume a greater proportion of their income relative to the higher income groups. So APC of low income is greater than the APC of high income. In the empirical studies, APC is observed to be smaller for the higher income groups relative to the low income groups because they are considered to be savers. However, over the period of time, the APC is observed to be constant, that is independent of the growth. Thus, in aggregate measures of income, your APC, because it is constant, it will be not considered. So let's just have a detailed look at the empirical data of consumption and investment with respect to the permanent income hypothesis. When you consider the cross-sectional data or the budget data studies, which were collected and classified by taking samples of households according to their income groups over a specific period of time, the data reveal that high income groups have smaller average propensity to consume than the low income groups. So the reason why we state the answer to be A is because of the already existing empirical result based on the cross-sectional data and the time series data. With respect to the cross-sectional data, the data shows that the high income groups have smaller average propensity to consume than the low income groups. With respect to the time series data, the long run empirical time series data that are collected by finding the relationship between consumption and income over a longer period of time, say 10 years, 5 years, we can see that the consumption function is a straight line from the origin, which means that the APC is constant. That is, we are looking at the consumption function C is equal to BY, which passes through the origin. So APC is constant throughout the long run, during which Y is increasing. We find the ratio of savings does not increase when the national real Y or real income increases as the actual historical time series data are considered. So the answer to those previous questions is not based on what the theory is, but based on what the empirical facts with respect to the theory that was made by Friedman was made, and thus the answer is A. Now, Keynes' consumption function does not fit with the empirical time series data in the long run. There are two important hypotheses which resolve the apparent conflict between the time series and the cross-sectional evidence. The first one is the permanent income hypothesis developed by Milton Friedman in 1957, and the second one is the life cycle hypothesis at about the same time by Albert Ando and Franco Modigliani in 1963. Thus, Milton Friedman's permanent income hypothesis present in 1957 complements Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis. Both hypotheses argue that consumption should not depend on the current income alone, but also on the expected levels of income. that the individual is that individual expects to earn in future. So some of the questions that would be asked: 2015 paper 2 December, question number 6. In the long sum, the transitory consumption will be infinity, remain unchanged, decline but will remain positive, or be zero. The correct answer that we have studied according to the previous session is number 4. That is, MPC for transitory income will become 0 or is 0. Which of the following assumption is not an assumption of the permanent income hypothesis? 2017 January paper number 3. A. Transitory income can be both positive and negative. Permanent income depends on human as well as non-human wealth. Transitory consumption can be both positive and negative. Average propensity to consume is greater than the marginal propensity to consume. Now, even though 1, 2, 3 can be seen in the permanent income hypothesis, number 4 is not an assumption that has been stated in the permanent income hypothesis, whereas transitory income, positive and negative, is actually stated in the assumptions of the permanent income hypothesis. Permanent income depends on human and non-human wealth. We had stated as to how this assumption had actually come true. 3. Transitory consumption can be positive and negative is also stated in the assumptions of the permanent income hypothesis. Average propensity to consume is greater than the marginal propensity to consume is not being shown in the permanent income hypothesis. Hence, the answer to this is 4. 2017 November paper 3, permanent income hypothesis assumes positive correlation between which of the following pairs of variable? Permanent income, transitory consumption, permanent income, permanent consumption, transitory income, transitory consumption. So obviously the answer to this question is going to be 3, that is permanent income and permanent consumption. Because in a long run, we had stated the fact that the transitory income will not affect, or transitory consumption will not have any effect on the consumption spending patterns of S3, permanent income and permanent consumption. Now with this we lead to the last consumption theory, that is the life cycle hypothesis theory. The life cycle hypothesis theory. The last of the consumption theories was actually postulated by Albert Ando and Franco Modigliani in 1963. Now, note and point, as we had discussed in the very first slides of the consumption theories, there are 2 versions towards the life cycle theory. The first one, the life cycle hypothesis, was actually formulated by Franco Modigliani and Richard Brumberg in the year 1954. However, because of the sudden demise of Richard Brumberg, the paper could not be presented. Hence, Modigliani had to redo the empirical analysis of the life cycle hypothesis later in the year 1963 with respect to Albert Ando. So there are 2 versions of it. Now, according to the life cycle theory, as we had studied in the previous slides, the permanent income hypothesis had actually complements life cycle hypothesis for the fact that they both argue that consumption does not only depend upon the current income. In fact, here the consumption patterns of the individual is suggested over the ways or over the life cycle of the individual taken together in general. So, according to the life cycle theory, the consumption in any period is not just a function of current income of that period, but of the whole lifetime expected income. In this case, we come across certain consumption assumptions of the theory. The first assumption of the theory can be stated as follows. A, that there is no change in the price level during the life of the consumer. Second, the rate of interest paid on assets is 0. So that means he is not inherited anything. The interest rate paid thus is 0. Third, the consumer does not inherit any assets and his net assets are results of his own savings. Fourth, his current savings results in future consumption. Fifth, he intends to consume his total lifetime earnings plus the current assets. Sixth, he does not plan any bequests or he does not possess any will paper. Seventh, there is certainty about his present and future flow of income. 8, the consumer has a definite conscious vision of life expectancy. 9. He is aware of the future emergencies, opportunities, and social pressures which will impinge upon his consumption spendings. 10th, the consumer is rational. Now, based on all these assumptions, the life cycle hypothesis is a typical theory that states that for a typical individual, the relatively low income at the early stage and now, according to this hypothesis, according to this hypothesis, Modigliani and Ando had categorized the lifespan of an individual under three important denominations. First is when he from the time he is studying or till the time he gets a job, the middle period, which is when he gets a job till the time he retires, and the end period, which is the life after retirement. And Modigliani had insisted on the fact that the entire consumption pattern of the individual will be based on these three phases. The first and the last phase emphasize on savings and borrowings because the individual does not have a steady income. However, in the middle stages, he will start earning an income by applying for a job, getting a job, and over the mid part of his life, he will start saving for the future, that is life after the retirement, till the point he assumes his lifespan to be. So here, a typical individual will have a flow of relatively low income at the early stages and at the end stages, but very high during the middle stages of the life. The individual does maintain a slightly increasing level of consumption throughout his life, and the present value of the total consumption would not exceed the present value of the total income during the lifetime. That is to say that even after the retirement, the individual will save in such a way that his consumption pattern that had been followed during his working period of time is actually continued even after the retirement. So his consumption will keep on increasing throughout his life. However, the present value of consumption will not be exceeding the present value of the total income during that lifetime. So here we can see a clear picture about how life cycle hypothesis has actually converted the savings or shown the consumption pattern of an individual over his lifetime. So here the individual assumes his lifetime to be 75. So the point y dash 7 at 75 is the point in which he is assumed to be dead. So, and the area CAY is this savings. This denotes the initial period of an individual wherein he will be borrowing money for studies, for consumptions. From the point AHB is the middle period of time, that is when he starts earning money. So you'll see that the initial stages of his earning would be comparatively low because he would be still repaying the debts of his student period of time. So it's only at the point H wherein the individual would have reached his maximum income power, and he would start saving now for the point B, C dash, Y dash, that is the point after retirement. So that is also going to be the savings. However, he will try to save in such a way that he would be continuing to live a lifestyle that he has been living in the point A, H and B. So as in the life cycle hypothesis, people smooth out fluctuations in income so that they save during the periods of unusually high income and dissave during the periods of usually low income. Someone who looks ahead to much higher future income consumes more accordingly. So the life cycle hypothesis suggests that in the early life, a person is a net borrower. In the middle years, the person will save much more to repay the debt and to put aside part of the income for retirement. In the later years, a person will dissave and consume more income. In fact, in each person, if each person saves zero over his life, then what we indirectly mean is that the average propensity to save will be equal to zero, and the APC, or the average propensity to consume, will be equal to 1. Modigliani had received the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1985 for his work on the life cycle hypothesis. Let us come across certain questions which have been asked consecutively over the period of time in NET exam. So if we have a look at 2012 June paper 2, assertion: according to the life cycle hypothesis theory of consumption, an individual level of consumption depends not just on current income but also on long run expected earnings. The reasoning for this is individuals are assumed to plan a pattern of expenditure based on expected earnings over the lifetime. Code A is true, R is false. Code number B, both the assertion as well as the reason of is false. Code number C, A is not correct but B is correct. Code number D, both the assertion and the reasonings are correct and R is the correct explanation of the assertion. Now, as we know, as we had told in the beginning of the slide, the life cycle hypothesis is actually more focused towards understanding that the consumption patterns is not based on current income but also on the future income or the expected income or earnings of the individual over the period of time, over his lifespan. So the assertion is absolutely correct, and the reason why he assumes to plan his expenditure is because it is based on the future income that he will receive over the period of time. So both A and R are correct reasonings or correct with respect to the assertion given, and therefore the correct answer to this question is going to be option D. That is, both the assertion as well as the reasoning is correct and R is the correct reason towards the given assertion. 2012 December, paper 2. Identify the correct chronological order of the following: Keynes consumption function, life cycle hypothesis, relative income hypothesis, Friedman's permanent income hypothesis. Now here kindly note the fact that based on the theories that we have studied so far, only life cycle hypothesis theories has a problem in terms of the order of origin. So we have one in 1954 that was with respect to Brumberg as well as Modigliani, and the actual work, that is 1963, that was done by Modigliani and Ando. So even though the correct option seems to be A, B, A, C, D, B, we also have to check if there is another option that is available, that is A, C, B and D. Now because that option is not given to us, the correct answer to this question is C, A, C, D, B. Absolute income hypothesis by Keynes, 1936. Dusenberry, 1949, permanent income hypothesis, 1957. However, here because we do not have an option of AC, DC, we will put in life cycle hypothesis as 1963 given by Modigliani. See, the same question was asked in 2014, June, paper 2. Now here it is again asked, arrange in the ascending chronological order. Absolute income hypothesis, permanent increase or income hypothesis, life cycle hypothesis, relative income hypothesis. Here on the other hand, we still have one, that is absolute income hypothesis, relative income hypothesis, and life cycle hypothesis and permanent hypothesis as an option C is also given. The other option is not given. So the correct answer to this is C. Here we are considering life cycle hypothesis to be the version in which Richard Brumberg and Modigliani had worked in the year 1954. So please note in mind that when given the question with respect to the chronological order, to check for the option with respect to the two versions of life cycle hypothesis also. So the Modigliani and Ando version, that is the 1963, is the official one, even though the initial version is actually in 1954. 2015 December, paper 2. Given the assertion that APC can never be 0 while it can be greater than 1. The reasoning is consumption expenditure is always positive even if income is 0. Now this again we know that both A and R, these are the given codes. The first code is both A and R are true. R is the correct explanation of A. Second is both A and R are true. R is not the correct explanation of A. Third is A is true, R is false. And fourth is R is true, A is false. So here APC can never be 0 while it can be greater than 1 because consumption expenditure is positive even if income is 0. Let's just try to explain it with the help of an example here. Let us consider the average propensity to consume for the given income and for the given consumption. Now we know that the average propensity to consume refers to the ratio of consumption expenditure to the corresponding levels of income. So therefore APC is nothing but C divided by Y. So given the income, that is 0, 100, crores, 200 crores, 300 crores, 400 crores, and the consequent consumption 40, 120, 200, 280, 360. When we calculate the APC, we are given the following APCs for 100 crores of income. If the consumption is 120, 1.20 is the APC. So here we see that for all these cases, the APC, that is 1.20, 1, 0.93, 0.90, turns out to be positive. So as a result of which, another thing to be noted about is that both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation for the assertion. Why? Because of the following features of APC. As APC is more than 1, as long as the consumption is more than the national income, that is before the break-even point, that is APC is greater than 1. APC will be equal to 1 at the break point wherein the consumption is equal to the national income. So APC is equal to 1 at the level 200 crores. APC will be less than 1 beyond the break-even point wherein the consumption is less than national income. So all these points will be considered for the point 0.933, 0.90 will be considered for the point where APC is less than 1. And fourth one, APC falls with the increase in income. As APC falls continuously with the increase in income because the proportion of income spent on consumption keeps on decreasing. And the last feature of the APC, that is APC can never be 0. Now APC can be 0 only if consumption becomes 0. However, consumption, as we know, is never 0 at any level of income. Even when you do not have income, you still consume certain commodities. Even at 0 level of national income, there is autonomous consumption. 2015, June, paper 3. If a linear consumption function passes through the origin, it means number 1, APC is greater than MPC. Number 2, APC is less than MPC. Number 3, APC is equal to MPC. And number 4, APC is equal to MPC is equal to 0. Now, when the consumption function passes through the origin, it means APC is equal to MPC. We had stated the fact that we'd seen it in Kuznets, in the Kuznets curve diagram that we had drawn, or in the classical economist, the concept of autonomous consumption fails to exist in the case when the consumption passes through the origin. As a result of which, when the line passes through the origin, the APC will be equal to the MPC or will be equal to constant. So the third option is correct. So with this we come to an end of the consumption theories. We have covered majority of the questions, repetitive questions that have been constantly asked over the period of time in NET exam. It is important to know the theories as to the dates, the books, the authors, and also it is relevant to know other authors who are indirectly related to the theories, like we had studied with respect to Dusenberry, wherein both Rosie Friedman as well as Brady had also contributed towards the theory. So it will help us if the question comes in with these people's names also. With respect to the consumption theory, again APC and MPC concept is very much important. All these consumption theories have actually derived from the fundamental psychological law of consumption that was given by Keynes. So they were more or less the contradictions as well as improvement towards what Keynes failed to observe. So as a result, these four theories hold very much high regard with respect to understanding the future consumption patterns of the people, especially with respect to the theories such as relative income hypothesis, permanent income hypothesis, as well as the life cycle hypothesis. So with this we come to an end of our session. Thank you.